Youth for David Granger is responsible for the content of this advertisement.
But the government is not willing to sit down and talk to us about the projects. So what we have here is a failed Atlantic Hotel project. People up to now don't know who the investors are going to be. And secondly, we have a failed Amila Falls project. The road is not even being completed. We have a failed Shedijagan International Airport project. It may not have failed yet, but it's certainly in trouble. We have a failed One Laptop for Family project. We have a failed fiber optic cable project. We have a failed specialty hospital project. So there's failure all around, and the government must learn by now that we have been given too many blunders. Mr. Ramatai is becoming a serial blunderer. Every project on which he embarks seems to be marked with failure. And it's expensive failure. That is the problem for you, for us, and our children.
Youth for David Granger is responsible for the content of this advertisement.
But the government is not willing to sit down and talk to us about the projects. So what we have here is a failed Atlantic Hotel project. People up to now don't know who the investors are going to be. And secondly, we have a failed Amila Falls project. The road is not even being completed. We have a failed Shedijagan International Airport project. It may not have failed yet, but it's certainly in trouble. We have a failed One Laptop for Family project. We have a failed fiber optic cable project. We have a failed specialty hospital project. So there's failure all around, and the government must learn by now that we have been given too many blunders. Mr. Ramatai is becoming a serial blunderer. Every project on which he embarks seems to be marked with failure. And it's expensive failure. That is the problem for you, for us, and our children.
Youth for David Granger is responsible for the content of this advertisement.
But the government is not willing to sit down and talk to us about the projects. So what we have here is a failed Atlantic Hotel project. People up to now don't know who the investors are going to be. And secondly, we have a failed Amila Falls project. The road is not even being completed. We have a failed Shedijagan International Airport project. It may not have failed yet, but it's certainly in trouble. We have a failed One Laptop for Family project. We have a failed fiber optic cable project. We have a failed specialty hospital project. So there's failure all around, and the government must learn by now that we have been given too many blunders. Mr. Ramatai is becoming a serial blunderer. Every project on which he embarks seems to be marked with failure. And it's expensive failure. That is the problem for you, for us, and our children.
We need someone to take us to the stars. Lead us to a place nice and warm, yeah. Who's gonna clean up all this mess? 19 years of endless stress.
Granger, take over this government.
You can hear it east, north, south, and west. People calling for the best.
Granger, we want you as president.
Mr. Granger is the man to lead this nation, to bring a better future for this generation, for build better schools, better education, for bring back the reputation. Now, we want a government that is trustworthy, provide employment and maintain security. Whether you're black, Indian, American, Chinese, a good life for all you Guyanese. We fed up of all the PPP.
Vote APNU.
Granger will succeed. 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 Granger will succeed.
All right, pleasant good evening. Welcome to another edition of Late Night with Chris and Annette. And of course, we're coming to you live from the studios of HBTV Channel 9. And of course, in studio with me is Annette Ferguson, my colleague and friend, Member of Parliament. And of course, we're here to chat with you. My apologies for not being present last Thursday. And of course, it was due to the APNU outreach exercise that have been that are presently being conducted throughout the length and breadth of the country. And of course, I was slated to speak at several public meetings, which was held in Region 2, the Essequibo Coast. And of course, I'm back here with you, with Annette Ferguson, and I know last Thursday, Annette, of course, would have been providing you with information.
Yes,
And of course, well, those exercises are still continuing. I think yesterday they were in Perica.
We were in Farm Lab yesterday. Well,
Today was Perica, rather.
yes. Well,
was pretty-
just before I get into my presentation, just want to say a pleasant evening to all you wonderful viewers, and thank you for joining us this evening. So, yes, Chris, as you rightfully said, yesterday we were at Farm on the East Bank Essequibo area, that's in Region 3, and this evening we were at Virgin Eugene and Perica respectively. Those outreaches culminated with a meeting, a community meeting, yes, in Virgin Eugene.
Okay.
And I must say that, persons turned out to hear exactly what the leader of the opposition and the PNC, the Honorable Mr. David Granger, had to talk about.
And then, well, you should note too that this Saturday coming, 2 public meetings slated for which one?
North Rumveld and Lamaha Springs respectively.
All right, so North Renveld, I think is last entrance, is it?
Yes, last
Last entrance. All right, so people in last entrance, North Renveld.
North Rumveld.
You're scheduled for a public meeting that is this Saturday. That meeting commences at 5 o'clock. And Lamaha Springs at 6:30. 2 public meetings in those areas. Again, it's all part of the APNU push to press on the government to call local government elections which have not been held for the past 17 years. And it's the 17 years coming after the 22 years of the return of democracy, freedom of speech and expression and all of that. But yet still 17 years after Guyana have not seen local government election. And of course, on Tuesday next week, the picketing exercise continues outside the office of the president. That's when they have the cabinet meeting. But according to APNU member Parliament, Mr. Joseph Harmon, he doesn't refer to it as a cabinet. He says it's a broken glass case. He refers to it as a broken glass case. So on Tuesday, outside the office of the president, when the cabinet meeting is in session, we are inviting you once again to be a part of the picketing exercise. We note that the last picketing exercise on Tuesday, we saw Blue Caps.
Yes.
Blue Caps
They
made
embraced.
their presence felt, and of course they must be applauded for the similar effort. Because as we mentioned before, local government election is not an APNU thing, it's not a David Granger thing, it's a Guyana thing. Because in the absence of local government election to identify fresh blood, new leadership, you will have a situation like what we saw, or like what is presently still going with the residents there on the east bank of Demerara. But of course, a team of APNU members of parliament and of course the public relations department, they were in the area. And of course, Annette Ferguson, you are always about knives on the ground. So you were there on the ground with, I think I saw Mr. Ernest Elliott and of course Mr. Mark Archer and so
And
forth.
Desmond Trotman.
Mr. Trotman
and
was
Joan
there.
Bagivins.
Good, Ms.
Yes.
Bavigins was there too. So tell us a bit about that. I'll ask the operator if he can just show the video of parts of the areas that flood, and then Annette will explain at the same time. So operator, over to you. You can show just the clips with the flooding and so forth. But what's the situation?
Well, the situation is basically where the Coca give way. And as a result of the high tide, persons' homes were flooded. And most of the homes, they were under 3 feet of water. And a number of household appliances, furniture, amongst other things, were destroyed, wet and stuff like that. And I mean, the residents there, they were very angry this morning. They were outrageous too. Because, yes, they said, look, who is going to compensate us now? No government official, Chris. No, we spent actually 3 hours on the ground in that particular area. No government official visited the residents this morning. But just before us leaving the area, I noticed Neil Kumar on the ground.
He lives not too far away from there. No?
Well,
In fact, you
turned
should
to
be the one of the
goodly
first person
gentleman-
to the ground.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I turned to the goodly gentleman this morning. I said, you know, I'm happy to see you here this morning, but were you able to take a look in the homes to see exactly what the residents are faced with this morning? Yes, but then again, you know what hurt the residents there is that he drove in, went just where the coca break give way, had his inspection done, said absolutely nothing to residents, went back into his vehicle and left the area. Even though you had the residents making their appeal to him, you know, at least say something, even if you don't want to tell the truth, but at least just let the people feel, you know, appeased or something to that effect. That man just went back into his vehicle and left the area.
Yeah.
Christopher, it wasn't a nice sight this morning. But what the residents reported is that apparently since yesterday afternoon, they recognized that there was going to be a threat. Whitaker went into the area last evening, and what he said to a few of the residents, not to worry, everything will be all right,
Yeah, that's
under control.
We're familiar with
Exactly.
that
particular phrase.
yes, yes.
You know,
Everything
and-
will be all right.
Yes, and just to know, because residents said that the thing started like 3 o'clock this morning. So some of them who were awake at that time, they would have, you know, experienced the water. But for those who woke
Operator, any
up,
footage?
you know, for those who woke up this morning after the 3 o'clock session, you know, what they recognize is from the bear, you know, their feet were actually in water. And for some, those that have like the lower bunks, you know, the double bunks, their beds were covered with water. This is no exaggeration. We were on the ground and we knew exactly what those people faced this morning. You understand? And you know, the other thing too, Christopher, is that whilst on the ground there, the residents complained about apparently the wood that controls the cook, you know, the door or whatever the case might be. It was apparently cut short. That area was cut short. So that's why when you had the high tide, now the water gushed in, it gave way and everything just went chaos in that community. You know?
Oh, I see. All right. Well, I mean, because I'm sure even now the residents there are still trying to count they're
exactly.
counting
Yeah,
their losses
exactly.
presently, because you know that this is flood water, this is not rainwater, this is salt water.
Obviously.
So obviously you have damage. I mean, it's completely destroyed, because once salt water gets on those things, no matter what you wash them out with,
God.
they're destroyed. essentially.
And you know, Christopher, allow me to say this. Residents further mentioned that, well, look, since 2 months ago,
Any footage of right
the defective door for the coca was reported to the relevant authorities,
Play.
be it the NDC and the NDIA, because Mr. Woolsworth is his name. He
Yeah.
too was on the ground there this morning, right? And what, you know, Christopher, you know what touched my heart this morning? You won't believe. Majority of the people said in 2011 they supported this government. And to see what they're faced with here this morning, right? No government official coming to say anything or to sympathize or empathize with them, right? So what, you know, the residents started to call for local government elections.
No, but you
They
see-
even called for change in this government.
No, you see, no, I mean, that doesn't say, you see, that's the point that we were making before, is that the fact that you haven't had local government, because this community is governed by an NDC, or
Yes.
supposed to be governed by an NDC. The fact that you will have to wait and see a local government minister go in there rather than the NDC
DC
officials,
officials.
it tells you that the NDC official have no control over the villages.
Obviously
And that is why the call for local government election has been intensified, because you have to empower those NDCs and those officials to take care of their own responsibility.
Yeah.
We spoke at length about the residents under this new local government system, that they have a right to meet and consult with the NDC before they
exactly.
execute any work.
Yes.
So the same wood on the coca that the residents there observed that could have broken away anytime, it could have been alleviated.
Exactly.
It could have been alleviated, because as we always point out, they live in the community.
Community?
They know.
Yeah.
It's like if you live in a house, you know where the
Where it
roof
leaks.
leaks, you know where the door cracks and so forth. And this is a classic case of why the call for local government elections to be held is that these residents who have suffered, you will know for sure that the present NDC officials may not like to be re-elected by these people because they will probably be dubbing them as incompetent.
Not only that, Christopher, you know what we were told this morning is that the chairman for the NDC, right? He is not a resident from within the community. You understand?
Classic
And
case.
same thing we have been preaching time and time since our at our various public meetings. We would have said to the residents that, well, look, if Tom Jones lives in Diamond, he wouldn't know what you, the people in Prospect Prospect is confronted with.
Exactly.
Do you understand? So this is the point, we continue to preach and continue to call for local government elections to be held
This
soonest.
is like the case with the overseer that have been foisted on the people
In
at
Pleasance.
Pleasance. It's a similar situation. All right, well, the image that you're viewing there and is what the APNU team that was in the community on the east bank of the Mirage this morning, viewing that coconut gave way, that the residents are now probably still inundated with flood waters. And as we mentioned before, it is salt water, therefore the damage to their equipment
Will be
and personal.
extensive.
We hope that there is some level of compensation that can be given to the residents
Well,
here.
let's trust that the authorities act soonest.
Very well. So Operator can come back to us. Thanks a lot for that. All right. So again, that was the footage of the outreach exercise conducted by the PNU in that community. Annette Ferguson,
Yes, sir.
the outreach exercise, well, we touched on Essie Kribuka, we were there and so forth. I want to go now to last Sunday, October 5th, marked 22 years of the return of democracy, freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and so forth. The bright days, I have to emphasize that. My mother always tell me once I'm making a point, I need to emphasize on it. The bright days of the PPP. In our public meetings that we had, we spoke at length about the state now and what we had previously. We spoke about the education. Back then, before 1992, Guyana could have boast of having the highest literacy rate for the Caribbean and so forth. We spoke at length about the former president and present sitting ministers of government that were all educated under the PNC and so forth. But then we juxtaposed the statement that was made a few weeks ago by our goodly Minister of Education that in 2014, 22 years after the return of democracy and the bright days of the PPP, 3 out of 10 children can read. But before we touch in depth about that, this school voucher, the $10,000 grant. Now, we always say this, and I mean, sometimes persons, you use the term, people chastise you. Y'all always say, oh, these people bad, oh, these people wicked, and look, I mean, it is a fact, it has been proven time and time again, that this government gives nothing without something behind. There is a hidden an agenda, always behind. Now, all of us in the National Assembly, the opposition that is, spoke at length. We argue that, look, providing a $10,000 grant does not solve a long-term problem.
No.
2, we were expecting that this $10,000 grant would have been given to parents before the new school term, so they could have used that to purchase books, uniforms, etc. Now, several months after the school term have commenced, we're now learning that sometime in the near future. But what parents didn't know then, what the National Assembly was not told then during the budget debate, we were told that this grant is going to be given to children attending public schools, full stop. And as such, an allocation was made, even though we argued against it, an allocation was made, and the allocation was made, passed, and approved. Now we learn, and now perhaps a lot of the parents who are viewing this program will learn now, that unless your child attended school during the previous school term, at least 85% on the register, unless your child attended school at least 85%. If that child did not, you or that child
To be denied.
will not be eligible for this $10,000 grant. And a lot of parents are now being, some of them who don't know will soon know when they turn up to get this money, and then they check the register, and then you see that you learn that your child didn't attend 85%. That $10,000 is not coming to you. And that information is only now being told. So the question I want to ask too is, if we allocated millions of dollars for this exercise, for this amount of students, and now we're being told that any one of these students who do not reach this 85% attendance criteria, they wouldn't be eligible. Where does the rest of that money goes?
Christopher, I guess it would end up just like with the
Campaign funds.
not only the campaign.
Campaign.
Okay.
You're going to bring in the pension thing with
Yeah,
the GPA.
yeah,
Yeah, of
yeah.
course.
I was gonna-
Yes,
I was gonna
exactly.
make that
Similar.
point.
I mean, it was the same case last year when the government come up with, oh, we want to help our senior citizens. We love them so much. We love you so much and so forth. And we were told that Guyana has 48,000 pensioners, and they're going to provide this subsidy for them to
Yes.
aid them with GPL and so forth. Then it's like, okay, you ask yourself the question, but wait, 25,000 or thereabout of our pensioners resides in regions that they're not connected to no GPL grid. So where does that 25,000 pensioners who are not connected to the grid, the money that was allocated to them, where did that money go?
A classic example, while we were at charity last Monday, the resident from Pomeroon,
That's right.
he asked the very question.
That's right.
You understand?
And
He said
he's a
he is
pension pensioner. And he
Exactly.
living in one of the riverine
No,
community.
exactly.
He get a
His
GPL. So you ask him where he grant there.
Exactly.
Point to be noted. So
Yeah.
again, I mean, campaign time, campaign fund, slush fund.
But Christopher, the government continues to deceive the people of this nation because what?
Yes,
They would put you on a
PPP.
high horse, and then eventually they will drop you down. Because a point to note here is that just before we went into recess, our shadow minister of education,
Yep.
Honorable
Amna
Member
Ali.
Amna Ali, asked the question:
Yeah.
what mechanism is in place to offset the payment of this school grant?
Yeah.
And the minister of education started to dance.
We now
and
putting it-
no direct question, no direct response or answer was
mercy.
given. And then after the recess, you had the children on vacation. You understand? The goodly minister came out publicly and said, well, look, this money will be disbursed by October 6th,
Yeah.
which
But-
is Monday gone there.
But it's not you boss the people bubble.
Exactly. And then subsequent to that, Chris, subsequent to that, she made another announcement saying that, well, look, they're still working on a few hitches, and the monies will be disbursed October the 15th,
Right.
which is next Thursday
But here now.
or Wednesday.
Here now. We got to ensure that we reiterate to people, because oftentimes people say, yeah, I like talk, yeah, okay, but when people speak, you must listen. From the leader Forbes Borna always says, is a sign of maturity
Maturity.
when you read not only what is on the lines, but what is between
Between
the
the
lines.
lines. Exactly.
Annette brought to your attention the last program or two programs before that we had, that the government had announced that by October 6th is when they're going to make this grant available. And then Annette buzzed the bubble that, look, don't forget October 5th.
Go.
The return of democracy. So the 6th now, you would have seen the president say, well, we're giving every child $10,000 grant. And then Irfan Mawani like smile, the cameras.
Exactly.
And then Gina and the propaganda machine start working from the hey, government giving and all of that. But, Annette, you mess the people them
no,
up.
I
man.
mess up nobody.
Yeah,
and
mess
then,
them up.
earlier this week, I heard, or last week rather, last Friday it might have been, one of the news house says, I think asked, what's his name? The chief executive officer,
Olato Sam.
Sam. When these monies will be disbursed, and he do dance.
Yeah, big
He
man.
do dance.
Yep.
And the touching words that he used. Don't worry. Don't worry. We will fulfill our promise.
Yeah.
You understand me? So, my fellow Guyanese brothers and sisters, We must never ever take the PPPC lightly.
Yeah,
They continue to deceive us.
exactly.
They continue to deny us, deceive us about their promises or with their promises, and deny us our constitutional rights
That's right.
by withholding local government elections from us.
70 years after,
Mm-hmm.
22 years after the return of democracy, freedom of speech, everything right. Now we're touching on school and education and them thing.
Mm-hmm.
Sex, tape, school, front page newspaper, the school.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're speaking about the recent videotape that went viral as it relates to students in a school having sex or performing
Oh, Lord.
sexual acts. And of course, we saw that made the front page of the Guyana Chronicle.
Oh,
But before we
yes.
go in depth in terms of that issue, let me touch on the Guyana Chronicle. And this is what maybe persons out there are unaware of, is that Guyana's Minister of Information, who is responsible for the Guyana Chronicle newspaper, is none other than His Excellency, the President, Donald Ramatar. He is Guyana's Minister of Information, and he's in charge, or the Guyana Chronicle comes under his remit. Now, the fact that the state-owned media, this is the state-owned, this is where the taxpayers' money going to, the state-owned media, that a reporter can report, can produce a photograph, that all of the layers that are, when you submit your story,
Yes.
it has layers that it has to go through. Your editor, you know, whatever. This photograph in the Guyana Chronicle, the state-owned media, was allowed to pass all of these safety nets and made its way, not to say in on the 4th page, 6th
But
page,
the front
the
page.
front page of the Guyana Chronicle. Now I await to hear the pronouncement of the Minister of Information, who happens to be His Excellency the President, Donald Ramatar, on this particular issue. But so much so for Chronicle. Now let us examine the situation with the students. Now, this is not the first school.
No.
It is not the first school or that you can consider of a high grade school that this incident is happening. Not that I'm saying that it's happening only in the high schools,
schools.
it's happening throughout. And for years we have we try to examine why this is happening, how this is happening, and so forth. We saw in previous similar cases, like the one with the girl in Queen's College,
Lisa Gopal.
Lisa Gopal and so forth, that the resolution was to suspend, to dismiss, remove head teachers and what's not the case be and so forth. But it continues to happen, and this is a totally different school. Now, this is a point that I've been stressing on for quite some time. In fact, in 2012, till end of 2012, as chairman of the GYSM, we had issued a press statement on 2 songs that were produced.
Oh, yeah.
One was titled The Dangles, and the other one was The Bamzi. So, I mean, it's late night, and I hope children are up at this time. Those 2 songs. We issued that statement because we always emphasize and stress the fact that in every song, there are these subliminal messages that our young people are exposed to, and these messages is what drives them. If persons saw the video with the youngsters in the act, one of them actually paused what she was doing, and she'd actually asked the person who was videotaping, you get my song, you play my song. I don't know if persons heard that, right? She was asking for this. So this song, whatever it was, is the song that was driving their modus operandi of them. Now, persons may say, well, okay, it is where they brought up, the home that they come from, their parents, and what's not and what's not. Let me tell you something. The entire society has a responsibility and a role to play. But at the end of the day, once you have a government in place, they have the ultimate responsibility for the society. As in what your people do, what they eat, what they listen to, and what they're exposed to. When you, as a government, will allow free reign for radio stations, free reign
Oh, yeah.
all over, that a child as young as 5 can pick up not necessarily a smartphone, but one of these we would call them mango pelters, and go to FM, any one of the bands. Now, the radios, for some reason the other day, feel that, okay, if you're playing certain type music and there's a part come, you can just simply beep it out or bleep it out. The reality is that everyone knows what you're beeping or bleeping out. It's like persons when you go to a dance hall and the DJ is playing the song and everybody's singing along, and the DJ stops the song, but the entire dance hall could continue singing because they are aware what it is. It comes back to the responsibility, the role that government has. Now, the fact that in Guyana, we allowed artists from Jamaica that sings the most vulgar, vile, worthless music that you could
Degrading
possibly...
to women. Oh my
Exactly. We allow them to come into the country. The government allowed them. They go up on stage, they perform, they dance, and our young people, our students in all of these schools are exposed to them. They can simply go to the stadium, pay $1,000, and they get it live and direct. And then when they come now and they act out what they were taught, what they learn,
Or what they see.
and what they see, we object him. Now, I was speaking to someone today and I telling them about a situation. Well, not a situation. I have a 1-year-old daughter here in 1 year, 8 months. Well, we go home in the afternoon and I sit down about to loosen the shoelace. And she's there and she's pulling the strings, loosen the shoes out. And then when I take off the shoes, she grabs it and she runs and she takes it back to the front and she puts it where she saw us doing. We have a society of young people that are growing up. We, the society, government, expose them to all of these things. We put no restriction on anything. We've never heard that the government of Guyana has banned a certain type artist from coming to Guyana to perform here because his music is vulgar, vile, lewd, it preaches violence, it degrades women, and so we've never had that. No, I would be wrong, because one such artist was actually banned
Exactly.
during the Barajagdio administration. No, yeah, vibes. But why was he banned? Because the objective at that time was to have the Gully Guard, as he's known as, and the Gaza. And then both of them were to support. You remember the concert when both of these artists were supposed to appear on the same stage?
something like
Yes,
that.
yes. And then our goodly former president Barrett Jagdeo was supposed to hold the Gully hand and the Gaza hand, and he's supposed to had been the president that united Gully and Gaza. Well, of course, one of the artists said, "Look, me," and they were paid and promised millions of dollars. You hear me? The one that came, he got the loot. The other one decided their riff or whatever is deeper than that, so he didn't turn up. Period. But they were promised millions of dollars to perform. What did our PPP government do? They banned that artist from coming to Guyana. And on the propaganda media, NCN, they went at length on the news that this artist and they degraded that art. I mean, he sings degrading music anyhow. So they degraded him for not coming to Guyana to perform. But really and truly, it was all part of the PPP's political objective that former President Barrett Jagdeo would have united Gully and Gaza on the stage at the National Stadium. Millions of dollars were promised to the one that didn't come. The other one left with millions of dollars. That was the only artist that was banned, and that was the reason why it was banned. The fact of the matter that this government would allow these type artists to come to this country and perform, just how you listened and you would see all of their videos on YouTube and all the same performance on stage. The last time you even had local persons on stage, and some of the audio, in fact, went live with some of the most lewd and vulgar words being spoken at the stadium. And our young people are there. Some of these same children from all of these schools are hearing them. You know, there's no reason. So I mean, as a government, once you demonstrate that sort of leadership, that look, this artist can't come here to sing to my young people ears. You can't play this type of music on the radio. You don't hear any of these ban and restriction. The subliminal message is there. I spoke at length about when we had the situation with young men on the CG bikes snatching phone and bag and so forth. And I spoke about the fact that outside of all of that, young people in Guyana can't find jobs because of this government who promised them all the time, oh, young people, oh, we got your back, we go look, and they can't find jobs. Now you have a young man who impregnates some young woman, and she's out there, she have a baby in hand, and she's texting him, hey, I gotta get Pampers, I gotta get diaper, baby gotta get milk. He now as a young man know that he has a responsibility as a father. But there is no job for him. Even though he may be qualified and so forth, person might be saying like justifying
His actions.
and yeah, that's what they will say, but I'm telling you the reality that we're in. No, he has a responsibility to that child. And do you expect him not to ensure that? And I mean, some of the music too. For example, Mick Millie, who sings with Rick Rose, in his lyrics, he said that, look, scare money don't make no money. If I ever go broke, I'm going to take your money. That is what our young people are exposed to. That's what they listen to. And that is what drives them. So to simply just say, well, the teachers at the school or the head teacher or the home that they come out from isn't sufficient. And again, you two who live in the community, you have a responsibility as well. Because you have to remember when you turn your music up loud and you playing the bamzi or the
God.
dangles rhythm,
Tell me
you
about
got to
it.
remember down the road that Miss Mary got some little children and they could hear your music too. So don't
know-
count yourself out. You two have a
Go,
responsibility.
exactly, Chris. It's like where I'm living. I mean, it's a busy area. You would have late at nights people turning up here. I tell you, up to last evening, late this morning, I went into bed. You understand me? Loud music after 1 o'clock. Car pass with loud music. In some cases, they come to get their bread. The ridiculous music. I gotta leave my home.
I'm going to tell them turn
I'm
up.
going to tell them, man, this is a residential area. Even though it's a business area, it is a residential area. Can you please turn off your music or just turn the volume down? But no, Chris. I mean, you talk about them looking at or listening to music. But what about the music cards?
That's
The music cards on the
That's true.
streets.
That too.
Every street corner, you hear the big blazing,
And
you know,
it's
and there's
loud.
something we have to.
You go
we
on
have
the,
to do
you go
something
on
about
you
it.
go on Borby's Car Park, you go on South Car Park late at night, the drop boxes are there. You got young people just
Not only
indulge.
at the parks.
No, but I'm saying
even passing through your
even
your,
passing through,
your
but I'm saying
residence,
on
your
the
communities.
parks. The young people are there any Friday, any afternoon, and they engage in the alcohol drinking. Now, where's the authorities? You want to tell me no minister, government, nobody saying that they can say, look, this we gotta put a
But that's
policy.
exactly
Nothing.
nothing, Chris,
But-
nothing.
Time is up. Operators is squeezing us in there. 22 years after the return of democracy. And this is the state that we are in. We saw the state that the community is in, those persons who have losses with the flooding. We spoke about local government election. The state that the country is in, despite
family.
And the family.
Yeah.
Despite all of the propaganda that the People's Progressive Party Civic would want to preach, the reality is there. And in fact, if anybody knows that this year for them is one of the quietest years.
Oh,
yeah,
yes,
here
in
not
their-
you're
in
quiet,
their
you're toned down. So viewers out there, we'll continue this discourse on another program. But as we mentioned before, the situation that we saw with those young people, we put the blame squarely at the feet of government. You have a social responsibility to every single citizen of this country. And the fact that artists, foreign artists, can be allowed to play on our local radio stations, will be allowed to come to our country with their vulgar, vile, lewd, that preach violence, that degrades women in society, that they are allowed to come in this country and sing and perform, and you want to blame a teacher because the children perform what they saw that these artists that you allowed to come and perform here? Check yourself. Folks, this is Late Night. On behalf of my colleague Annette Ferguson, we'd like to invite you again next week, Thursday. Saturday public meeting, Lamaha Springs and North Rumveld. Please come out to those 5 and 6:30 respectively. Oh, I'm sorry, before I go, I'm actually proceeding on some much needed leave. So I will be away from this program for about just over a month for personal, medical, and other reasons.
Tuesday, picketing.
Yeah. So Tuesday, 9:30, gather outside of the Square of the Revolution, and of course, we picketing exercise at the office of the president continue. We have to stress the point: local government elections are essential. After 17 years, this democracy that the government preach, we want our freedom.
Yes.
We want that right to elect our officials at local government elections.
That is what the Constitution
Exactly. It is
prescribes.
said.
Yeah.
Until next time, goodbye for now.
Last year, we partied in the heavens on earth. This year, Pulse is taking you on a journey through a fabled city. A city of